flower friends, it's Nicole from Flower Hill Farm, and in today's video I want to talk to you guys about the plans that I have for 2022 in the first of a series of video. This video specifically is about the plans for inside the deer fence. First, we're going to take a look at some video that I took earlier. I guess it would have been last year. Can you believe we're in almost the middle of January already? So this video was taken after our first few frosts and before I planted the tulips, if you'll believe it. So this was, I think, probably late October, early November, and we were cleaning inside the deer fence. So the deer fence has undergone major changes over the past couple of years. Now, when we first moved in here, there was no fence up around this area. In my first year planting flowers and vegetables, I had a huge problem with deer. They basically just snacked on everything that I was growing, and I said nope. When they ate my peas, they started a war. So year two, I ended up putting up a 3.5 foot tall chicken wire fence all the way around this area, and that really didn't help. It helped for rabbits and stuff like that, but the deer just walked over it and kind of giggled at my attempts of keeping them away from my vegetables and my flowers. That's when I decided to build a fortress. So we put up an 8 foot tall deer fence in early spring 2020. I don't have exact measurements for the space inside the deer fence, but when I kind of did a rough estimate, it's between 1/5 and 1/4 of an acre. So it's quite a bit of growing space if you think about it. This year, we saw some major changes to the flow inside the deer fence. It's been restricted a little bit in the years since we moved in here because there was a big shed in the middle of it. And not only the shed, but there were also some potting tables and basically just heaps of someone else's garbage that was there since we moved in the form of plastic bins and a whole bunch of pottery. And basically it was all broken and useless. A lot of plastic pots, hanging baskets, stuff like that. So we were having to kind of move around the shed until we decided to tear it down this year. Now, this shed was dilapidated. It was growing mold on the inside of it, but it was a place for my snakes to live, and snakes are super helpful when it comes to, preventing damage from mice in the garden and stuff like that. So I really want my snakes to stick around, but the shed needed to go. I also had some hoop house structures without the plastic behind the shed, and that's where I was growing some grapes and also some climbing beans and stuff like that. Those we also moved outside of the deer fence. They're sitting on the side, no big deal. I'm gonna figure out some use for them, maybe order some new plastic and go ahead and use those as they were meant to be used in the form of smaller hoop houses. So that'll be some interesting things to go through as we take on 2022. So let me see, where am I? For the most part, this area is now a blank slate. So there are some things in there that are perennial. Off to the side, I have some perennial phlox, some tall phlox in there, and I also have a few goat's beard plants, and those will remain there. They're very much off to the side though. I also have all of my tulips planted in that area, and that's also off to the side so they don't get in the way when it comes time to make the beds in there early this spring. I also have 2 4x4 foot raised beds inside that space, and inside those raised beds I have some herbs. I've got some oregano, some thyme. I have my David Austin roses. Speaking of David Austin roses, the first change for 2022 inside the deer fence is more David Austin roses. So I placed a new order for some David Austin roses, 6 of them, and they're all going to be coming to me bare root, not as potted roses, but as bare root roses. Those come a few weeks earlier than the potted ones, and if you get them in the ground right away, they can establish just as fast or even quicker than the bare root roses. So I have a series of those. I'll tell you about them now. So the very first one that I ordered is called Olivia Rose Austin, and if you pay attention, I had that one in the past, but sadly that is the one that perished in the hole. And so David Austin does have a 5-year guarantee on their roses, and if something happens to that, you can let them know and they'll replace it for free within 5 years. I could have done that, and I guess I just felt a little bit guilty because I wasn't sure if I ended up killing the rose. So I just placed a new order for it instead of having them replace it for free. So I have one Olivia Rose Austin coming, and it's the prettiest shade of pink. So beautifully doubled in its petals. So I'm a little bit limited to the roses that I can select for my garden and my farm because I'm a zone 4 and there are not a lot of options when it comes to zone 4 gardening for roses. They don't tend to be, I would say the majority of the roses are zone 5 and higher. I'm sticking with zone 4 and crossing my fingers that we don't have an abnormally cold winter. For those of you who are not familiar with the Olivia Rose Austin, it has cupped mid-pink rosettes with a delicate fruity fragrance. Now I'm just reading the description off of the website right now, and it grows well in pots and containers. It also grows well as a hedge, and it grows between 4.5 feet tall and 3.5 feet wide. So it also has a repeat bloom, so it will bloom for you all summer long. So Olivia Rose, welcome to the garden. All right, so the next one we have, let me look it up here. Got my notes on my computer. My little flowers, I love my flowers. Okay, so we have Princess Alexandra of Kent. Now this is also a pink rose. There are just so many pink roses that I love. This one claims to have unusually large blooms that are bright pink flowers, full petaled and deeply cupped. In spite of their size, they are said to be not clumsy, and they are held nicely poised on a well-rounded shrub. This one's a little bit bigger. It's 5 feet wide, 5 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and it also has repeat flowering blooms, and you can use this one, it says, for tea as well. Fragrance is said to be strong on this one as well, which I love. Oh, it says the scent is strong and delicious fresh tea fragrance, which changes to lemon, eventually taking on hints of black currants. What? I'm so excited. The next rose on my list, also another pink one, the Ancient Mariner. I'm just in love with these. The Ancient Mariner is a mid-pink repeat flowering rose, also zone 4. Love it. Now this is an impressive variety bearing masses of large, many-petaled blooms on a bushy, quite upright shrub. The blooms are a lovely glowing mid-pink at the center, and they pale toward the edges. Over time, they reveal a cluster of golden stamens. Isn't that lovely? So it says that the smell is a strong myrrh fragrance. I just had to look up what myrrh is because I don't know what that smell is, and it just says myrrh resin has been used throughout history as a perfume, incense, and medicine. So I'm excited to smell what that smells like. Let's smell. I wish we had smell-o-vision. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay, so this is a 4 foot by 4 foot shrub. Next up on the list, we have Litchfield Angel. Now I really wanted a cream colored rose, and that is what the Litchfield Angel is. Now I ordered 2 of these. The others I just got 1 of each. So this says it has a light musky fragrance, and it also is a repeat flowering. This one is the biggest out of all the ones that I purchased. These are 5 by 5 foot space. Pale peachy pink buds gradually open to form neatly cupped cream rosettes. Each bloom has a perfect ring of waxy petals, enclosing numerous smaller petals. Eventually the petals turn back to form a large domed flower. I'm completely in love with these, and I think that they are just beautiful. And this one, it actually says that it's nearly thornless. It doesn't have nearly the number of thorns as a typical rose bush. Okay, so lastly on the list, it's a rose called Eustacia Vi. Eustacia. I'm gonna say Eustacia. Eustacia Vi. This is a dreamy combination of pink and peach. Eustacia has a strong fruity fragrance, and it's also a repeat flowering. It's a little bit on the smaller side. It's 4 feet tall, spreading only 3 foot wide. Also good for pots and containers. And this says, exceedingly pretty rose of soft, glowing apricot pink. Each bloom packed with numerous, delicately ruffled petals. I'm swooning over this one. I'm completely swooning. Now, it's named after the flawed heroine of Thomas Hardy's The Return of the Native. So if you're familiar with that, It's Eustacia from You Return of the Native. Anyway, those are the roses that I'm going to be adding into the deer fence area. Now, we are going to be building more raised beds in order to do that. And I built the raised beds for the roses because I have just some really nasty perennial weeds in that area. And in order to kind of put off the perennial weeds coming up into the rose beds, that's why I have them in the raised beds. And they're tall raised beds. They're, I think the 2x10s that we used are 10 inches tall. Yeah, those 2x10s are 10 inches tall. So I have 10 inches of soil in those raised beds. So these will be arriving mid-spring, and they are arriving bare root. Now I'll be planting 2 each in the raised beds. My raised beds, I did them 4 foot by 4 foot, and I put each rose on the edge of the bed. So they seem to be happy there right now, the ones that I have. So I do have a few established rose plants inside those raised beds already in the deer fence. I didn't use those roses for market or for my CSA last year. I did use a couple of the blooms for custom bouquet orders and a bridal bouquet, but I did not use them on a regular basis. I don't know what the plans are for those future blooms, but I just love having them around, and seeing them makes me happy, and smelling them makes me even happier. So I don't know what the plans are for those. I don't know if they're gonna be a part of the farm as far as, cutting them and using them in bouquets, but they're more for my mental health, and they make me happy. So between the roses and the perennial phlox, the goat's beard, and the tulips, that's only about 5% of the space that I have available inside that fenced in area. So what is gonna happen for the rest of that space? Well, I'm gonna be using the bed maker to put rows in there. Now, I'm not exactly sure how many rows we'll be able to fit in there. We did some measurements, and we did some trials, and we did some laps up and down, and we think with spacing them about 2 to 2.5 feet in between the rows to be able to get a small mower in between if we need to, we can fit 9 rows in there. We're hoping. If it ends up being 8, it ends up being 8. But we're planning on 9 rows. So what will I be planting in those rows? Well, first of all, those rows will be going about north to south. They'll be going north to south, and that's because that's the way the tractor has space to maneuver to build those rows in there. And that's gonna give us the best length if we run them north to south. So half of the beds that I built in there last year, which I built them all by hand in there last year because of the shed and some other things in the way, we couldn't get the tractor back there in the first place. So I did all of those by hand, and I did some that were north and south and some that faced east to west, and there is debate about which one is better. I didn't find a benefit either way. I thought all of my plants that were north-south and all of my plants that were east-west, the rows I mean, were great. I didn't see an issue. All of the ones that I did outside of the deer fence down the hill in the 14 rows, those all ran north-south, and I had no issues. The only issue that I can see happening is if you have a tall crop, like I had the cosmos last year, and the cosmos were so tall, and you know the way the sun goes, so it'll go east to west. So those cosmos dropped a shadow over top of the row next to them. So if you have a tall crop, plan for it to be on the edge so that it's not drowning out anything next to it with its shadow. So that was the only issue I had last year. The cosmos shaded out the lisianthus. So that could have been a problem. So that's something I say look out for, is to make sure your tall crops aren't gonna shade out your shorter crops. But I'm gonna be running all of the ones inside north to south. So what am I planting in there? Well, we're bringing back the deer-loving plants that were in there last year. I'm talking about the annual phlox and the Rubechia. Both of those crops are plants that the deer love to eat. So I'm going to be going heavy on those inside the deer fence. I'm actually going to be doubling the number of both phlox and Rubechia that I planted last year. And I'm gonna tell you why that is. It's because I'm going to be attempting to take on a second farmer's market this year. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to double the number of stems that I had this year for the most part. There are some things that I think I can get away with not doubling, but I'm definitely wanting to double the Rubechia and the phlox that I had last year. So last year I only had a 15-foot row of phlox, and those were spaced 4 inches apart. I think that was about 300 plants. I'll have to go back and check specifics, but I spaced them 4 inches apart. So this year I'm planning on 600 phlox babies so that I can fill up a 30-foot row of phlox. Oh my gosh, I just thinking about that honestly makes me so happy. I might not stop at 600. I want an entire row of just annual phlox. And when I tell you that I still had phlox blooming and usable until frost, I'm not kidding. And that was not from the succession planting. That was from the initial planting of the phlox. I had it all the way through frost. It was beautiful. It was a filler that it just was like a dainty, precious filler that I loved to use. And the crop itself just made me happy. Anyway, so I want an entire row of annual phlox in there, and it takes a lot of work to pinch all that phlox, but it's well worth it because you ended up getting, I mean, my stems were 18 to 24 inches long after 3 pinchings. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Yeah, pinch, pinch, pinch. 3 pinchings, and they were tall enough to use. So now let's talk about the Rubechia. I'm also doubling down on the Rubechia. It performed so well for me last year that I want more of it. I want an entire row of Rubechia. So last year I planted about 250 plants. They took up a 25-foot row and I spaced them every 6 inches. They seemed extremely happy with that spacing. So next year I'm going to aim, I guess this year I'm going to aim for 500 plants, and I want it to take up an entire row. And as soon as we get our measurements, I'm going to have to go out and like actually measure what we think we're going to be able to get in there, because I can't just measure the length of inside the deer fence, because you have to take into consideration that the tractor has to stop and turn around. So you can't go all the way to the edge with the bed because you have to be able to turn around inside the fence. So it's going to stop short, I'm guessing 10 feet. So I'm going to have to plan something for beyond right, the bed. So I'll probably do some direct sowing back there. But anyway, I want an entire row of phlox, an entire row of Rubechia, and I've got some new and exciting varieties of both phlox and Rubechia coming. I'll be going over that this week actually in a seed video. I'm doing a whole like seed unboxing video later this week. Anyway, it's just taking on this second market, and this second market has the potential to be better than my Boonville market that I'm in right now. It's got a lot of traffic and a lot of vendors, and no flower vendors. So I'm told that it's a very promising market, and if I could get into this market, it could be a very good thing. But the thing is, the market is the day after my Boonville market. So it's gonna be a tricky thing for harvesting, right? So if I harvest everything for my Thursday market, what am I gonna have left for Friday market? Because it won't have enough time to grow again and give me more stems. So in order to be able to do that, I have to double my stems that I have available at the same time. I'll tell you how I'm gonna be able to do that. I have brought on someone part-time. So I do have a friend of mine who's going to be working for me part-time, and starting in just a couple of weeks when we really start to get into our seeds and stuff like that. So that's the only way I'm going to be able to manage this for sure, because that's something I learned last year. It'll be something I'll talk about when I talk about my lessons learned from this last season. Is I can't do this by myself. As much as I want to think that I can, I just can't. It's just not feasible. And it's time to really ramp it up and bring some help in. Otherwise, I'm not gonna be able to do this. All right, boom. So the Cosmos performed really well inside the deer fence. And I know for a fact that the deer will eat the Cosmos, because the wildflower field, which had Cosmos up the wazoo, was delayed in the blooming of the Cosmos because the deer just come through and take their heads off, right? So I'm keeping an entire row this year of Cosmos. I only had about an 8-foot patch of Cosmos, and I did the 6-inch spacing on those. No, I did not. I did a 9-inch spacing on the Cosmos. It was a 9-inch spacing on the Cosmos because they get big, let me tell you. Not only do they get tall, they get wide at the base. So I want an entire row of Cosmos. I'm gonna tell you, I had Cosmos last year that I didn't even start. like packets that I didn't even open. I had a double white. I did do the double cranberry, but I had cupcakes, Cosmos. I just had so many Cosmos that I didn't even start from seed last year. And that was a big mistake on my part because they're so whimsical and beautiful. And I had florists asking for Cosmos for weddings and stuff like that. So I want an entire row of Cosmos. But I'm going to be moving the Cosmos because, like I said, because they're so tall, I mean, they're taller than me. They throw a huge shadow over top of whatever crop is next to them. So I'm gonna put them along the edge by the tulips. So by the time the Cosmos grow to the height that they throw a big shadow, the tulips will be gone and there'll be nothing there for that to shade out. So that's my plan with the Cosmos. Okay, so I'll also be dedicating a partial row to the grow along for 2022. Not only do I want to keep those seedlings and those plants closer to the house so I have easier access to them, I want to keep an eye on them, I cannot risk the deer or anything coming in and devouring the grow along. Can you imagine? Nicole, let's do a grow along. Okay, 2 months later. Sorry guys, the deer ate all my seedlings. I can't have that happen. So for security and insurance on my part, I'm planting the grow along crop inside the deer fencing. So that'll be a partial row, and I'll talk about more as we start to do the grow along videos. Last year I had basil inside the fence, and basil's not one of those crops where you have to worry about the deer eating them, but I will say I do plan on doing a partial row of basil inside the deer fence because of the temperature. So the outdoor temperature down the hill where I have my other crops is a couple of degrees colder at night. So when there was a frost down the hill, there was not a frost up at the top of the hill. So I think just for insurance, my camera's being funny. It just stopped recording. And then I pushed it again and it just said nothing. It just turned off. You good? You good? Okay, anyway, what I was saying is that the basil inside the deer fence survived the first frost when the basil down the hill was destroyed. So I'm thinking keeping some inside the deer fence was a good insurance policy for me because then I'll be able to have it a little bit longer in the season because you know how I love my basil. So good. All right, you may be wondering about the lilies. I had some lilies inside the deer fence. Those are gone. I had to take those out because two things. Number one, I had to get that area ready for next season. Number two, the red lily beetles really were a problem this year. And it was a new problem. We didn't have them in 2020. 2021, they're like, hi, I'm here. So that was an issue for me. So I decided the best way to prevent that problem is to plant all of my lilies in crates. So I'm gonna be using the crates and I'm gonna be planting them in the crates and I'm gonna be putting those crates inside the hoop house. So hopefully moving them completely to a different spot on the farm and putting them underneath cover will help me to prevent any red lily beetle damage because they are nasty and you don't want them on your lilies because they will devour them in like a day. It's crazy. Anyway, so the lilies need to be protected from deer, but instead of putting them inside the deer fence, I am moving them to inside the hoop house in crates. I will be succession planting those, and I think that will make it easier to succession plant and it will take up so much less space. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. It's an experiment for me this year. Okay, so I've got, let's see, I've got the Cosmos, I've got the Phlox, the Rubechia, I've got like some basil and then the grow along. So let's say that that's about 4 rows. And that leaves a lot of space left. That leaves quite a bit of space left. And you're probably wondering what else I'm gonna put in there. Well, I am gonna fill it with vegetables. I missed growing vegetables so much last year. And I guess I didn't realize how much I was gonna miss that until I failed epically at planting vegetables. And they're my first love. They were what made me a gardener in the first place. And I realized how deeply I missed growing vegetables when I had no vegetables to harvest. I had tomatoes, don't get me wrong. The girl had hundreds of pounds of tomatoes last year, and I love a tomato and I will always be grateful for them, but I missed the other stuff. So I will be using the deer fence to plant my vegetable garden this year. So about a third to half of the space will be dedicated to vegetable growing. And I know I said that I was gonna plant more vegetables last year, but I ran out of time, and as one person, I just couldn't do it. I'm so proud of what I was able to accomplish last year with the flowers and the new things that I was able to do. But man, that was a lot of work between establishing the lavender and the new 14, and then all of those proven winners plants and the hydrangea field. That was a lot of work, and all of that's done. That was one-time stuff. Well, not the 14. But I don't have to plant another hydrangea field this year. I don't have to plant more lavender this year. I don't have to plant more beautyberry and coralberry and lilacs. That stuff's all done. So now I can turn my attention to the other stuff that I want to do, and that will definitely be vegetables. And I'm so excited about the vegetables that I have ready for this year. I'll do a vegetable seed video because guys, your girl crazy. I'm gonna tell you, she's crazy. Anyway, I really messed up my veggies in 2021, and I gotta make up for it this year. It actually hurts my stomach a little bit because I usually have, can beans, and I can things, and I wasn't able to do that. I preserve things, and that didn't happen for me. The only thing I think I did was tomatoes and apple cider. So, yeah, I miss my green beans. I'm eating those all winter long. That didn't happen. So the green beans, they coming at you hard next year. Okay, anyway, all right, enough pity party about the vegetables, but you can expect some amazing vegetables this year. And my addition of part-time help around here is gonna make that happen, I think. Okay, so what about my sunflowers? You guys know that sunflowers, in my case, need to be protected by the deer. They took out probably about 10% of my crop in 2020, just by coming through the field and just taking bites whenever they pleased. So last season I planted them in the back of the deer fence, and I did succession plantings. I did 13 succession plantings, and I found that was not nearly enough. Well, I only planted a couple hundred each time. Well, a couple hundred each week is not enough for me. It wasn't enough. I mean, think about it. Just my CSA with 20 members last year, that wasn't even enough for my CSA to have sunflower bundles. I don't know what I was thinking. I dropped the ball on sunflowers, and I can't let that happen again. So the sunflowers will not be going in the deer fence this year. Nope, they will not. I need a bigger space for the sunflowers. So there is a patch that I planted my sunflowers in 2020. I'm bringing it back. It's coming back. And I purchased an 8-foot tall deer fence, like a netting one, and some stakes, and I'm putting up a temporary deer fence around that sunflower space. That's happening, and I'm using my Earthway seeder, and I'm planting massive rows of sunflowers. I have more than 20,000 seeds to plant this year. I don't know if I'm going to get them all planted, but that is what I have to plant, and my goal is to at least plant half of them. Whew, at least. Because my sunflower bundles that I introduced at the farmer's market were huge hits, and those were 3 sunflowers and a little bit of status or Sweet Annie, a little bit of filler. Those bundles were my most popular thing at the farmer's market, and so I need to plan for at least a couple hundred for each market day. So that's 400. So that's 400 a week right there just for my market sales, and then add CSA on top of that. And let's say that's another 300 stems for my CSA. So yeah, I'm probably gonna end up planting 1,000 a week. Yeah, that's the plan. Plans change, don't hold me to it. But my plan right this second is to attempt to plant 1,000 sunflowers a week, because I know I can move them. I know I can move them. Okay, so before I plant anything inside the deer fence, I'm going to be bringing in some compost. So later this spring, guys, it's coming. So later this spring, I got a guy. He's a local guy who delivers rocks, stone, wood chips, compost, etc., etc. Whatever you need, you call him, and he brings it to my doorstep, quite literally. So I tell him, dump it here, he dumps it here, leaves it for me. Beautiful thing. So he's gonna be bringing me some quality compost. Now, I've had some experience with some bad compost. I have had people tell me that they had aged manure, and I have had truckloads of aged manure dropped at my doorstep, and I've had very bad impact from that. I had seeds in the manure. I have new weeds that I've never had before because of that manure, and it's been really a nightmare. Yeah, then the only place where these weeds exist is inside my deer fence. So that's where I had the manure spread. I won't be doing that again. This compost that he's bringing to me has been tested. I've got the result. It's got like the pH level, the nitrogen level, the phosphorus, like all the levels. It's got all the levels. So I know exactly what this stuff is made of. So if you're bringing in compost, just beware. It's very, you want to trust people who tell you that it's been sitting for 2.5 years behind their barn. Just make sure you bring in good stuff. That's all, because you'll be kicking yourself for years to come if you don't. All right, anyway, I'm sure there will be other items that I bring in, but this is my plan right now. So last year, the Lisianthus was planted inside the deer fence unnecessarily. It didn't need to be planted there, but I did that because they were my babies, like my Lisianthus babies. So I think I might be trying something different this year with them. I might do a trial of them in the hoop house to see how they do there. So I don't really have that hoop house planned out 100% just yet, but that will be coming in another plans for 2022 video coming up again in the next several weeks. So in the meantime, we have a big storm happening right now. It's been freezing rain all morning, and they just forecast 12 to 24 inches over the next 36 hours. So I'll be doing a lot more planning while I watch the snow fall. But deep diving into those plans is what helps me get through the winter months. So I'm very excited to share all of these plans with you, and as they change, I'll let you guys know. But anyway, I'm glad you guys are, if you're still here, bless your heart. Bless you. I've just been rambling on for like half an hour. I don't even know how long, but I know we're all craving right now. We're craving the soil under our fingernails. We're craving the release and the, I don't know, it's just such a spiritual connection with the earth when we get our hands dirty. And I know we're all craving that right now. So I'm trying to bring you guys as much garden content as I can. I know I've been a little bit absent over the last 6 weeks or so. I was very sick. I ended up very sick. So I'm feeling much better, much better right now. And I'm getting ready to start the 2022 season off with a bang, man. Really, I can't wait. So I'll be bringing you guys for everything. But in the meantime, while we can't put our fingers into the earth, we can totally dream about doing so. And I'm glad that I'm able to share that dream with you guys. So thank you guys so much for sticking around, and we'll see you soon. You're so precious. She's my beast. She's super. Look at the camera. You're shy. You're shy. I love you so much. This year, we made some manger. Away in a manger, my dear fence does hold. Oh, I cut my hair again, guys. I really like it. Tommy does such a nice job. Thank you, Tommy.